Hello guys, let's get straight to the point. You have seen the title of this video and this is specifically very important for the EPFO examination. And within that syllabus of EPFO examination, we have something called industrial relations. Now, a lot of people might be confused about the source for industrial relations and the kind of questions that one might have to read. So the easiest way to handle this question, you don't have to run around for different sources of information. The information is right in front of us in the Ministry of Labor and Employment. If you check out the website, acts and rules are present, and within that you have industrial relations. So there were a lot of laws with respect to industrial relations, but the advantage for this exam right now is after May 2020, all the specific provisions of this different laws were consolidated into industrial relations code. So that is going to be very significant for this exam because the exam is conducted now in 2021 after this new code came into the picture. So instead of going through each and every document and the different provisions, the value that I will try to add from my side is try to look at the consolidated code and present it in the format that is useful for this exam. And with regards to the importance of this component of the syllabus, industrial relations, not international relations, this is UPSC EPFO. Here IR means industrial relations. And in this aspect of the syllabus, it is believed that we can expect at least 15 questions or maybe 20 questions also, depending on the trend that we have seen in the previous papers. So, what are the different aspects from where questions are asked? We will see as we go through this short video series. The strategy videos and all that are posted elsewhere on the web. You can just go through them. I'll be not using my time for that. I'll just deliver the content. You can use it wisely. Also, there is no need to make any notes because I'll be publishing this PDF in the channel. You can directly go through that and add any points if you think something is missing from your understanding. Here is a screenshot from PRS which is trying to explain the overview of labor law reforms. So it says that 29 existing labor laws were actually consolidated into 4 different codes, and one of the code corresponds to industrial relations. So let us try to understand the approaches for industrial relations. This is the theoretical perspective, and this is important because MCQs will be asked even from this theoretical perspectives of approaching IR. That is like the evolution of industrial revolutions as a systematic study. Let us examine each one of them. The first thing that you have to know is the definition. What is the definition? Simply put, instead of reading long, lengthy definitions, this is an MCQ exam, you have to know there are 3 stakeholders involved. 1, the worker; 2, the industry; 3, the government. And each of them have a specific predetermined criteria for their own welfare. If you take a look at the industry, they want to maximize their profit. If you take a look at the perspective of workers, they are concerned about their safety as well as welfare. So there is often a conflict between workers and industry. Just to put things into context, if you remember a few years ago in Maruti, there was a big clash between workers and industry, and what happened is a manager was killed in that accident because of the outrage. So such kind of incidents are unwarranted, and that is why government is the third party in this relationship between the industry and the workers. And this is where government is trying to bring a balance and plays a regulatory role in controlling the behavior of both the sides. So it is like a neutral empire. It plays the role of a facilitator and a regulator. So this is the definition aspect that you have to know for this exam from MCQ perspective, nothing more. The second one, the second dimension to this definition aspect is you have to know there are some other stakeholders also. One is the employers association. For example, you have Amazon, Flipkart, etc. If they come together and try to represent their grievances to the government, that association is called employers association. Similarly, when workers come together, such a union is called trade union. This gives them a collective bargaining power. So collective bargaining power is the logic for the survival of trade unions. Thirdly, if there is a conflict between these two branches, the need for courts and tribunals to settle the issues between them will arise, and these courts and tribunals will be created by legislature. So this is the framework of the stakeholders involved. Now, one MCQ area which is very important for this exam is approaches to industrial relations. What are the different approaches? So the broad philosophies, if you classify them, what is the underlying logic that these approaches take is one, class conflict. That is, workers are not working with industry, their interests are in conflict. And the other school of thought is about mutual conflict, means everyone is working in their mutual interest. So it is in the best interest to settle things amicably or in a friendly manner. And the third one says that both are trying to compete with each other for their own self interest. So what are the nuances involved in each of this approach? Let us have a look. There are four important approaches: unitary approach, pluralistic approach, Marxist approach, and a systems thinking. Unitary approach. What does this say? This approach says that both workers and employers, they work together in harmony, and the employer is actually acting like a guardian and takes care of the worker, and there is a paternalistic attitude exhibited by employer. What does this paternalistic attitude mean? Like the role of a father in a family who takes care of his children, the same kind of attitude is exhibited by employers towards workers as well. But they also say trade unions are disruptive in nature, that is, they stop the work, and activism takes a toll on the productivity of the company. The criticism is that this is very manipulative in its approach. It does not take into considerations the real grievances of the workers by discrediting trade unions. So this is the first approach. Second approach, pluralistic approach. This is very realistic, it is very practical in its nature. It says that conflict is very much possible because the interests of both the workers and the employers is different. So naturally, it is quite possible that workers will come together to form unions for a collective bargaining power. Therefore, in order to avoid disruption, the complaint that unitary approach says, what is the need is that there is a need for a mechanism to settle the issue peacefully. And this mechanism should be created by state, that is government. This is what pluralistic approach is. Now let us come to the third approach, Marxist approach. Marxism, if you have studied communism, is considered to be very radical or extreme. In simplest words, what is Marxism? It is a struggle between the people who have basic material needs and wealth and those who do not have it. That is rich versus poor. So everything that Marxist looks at, or Marxist school of thought looks at, it is through the lens of this rich versus poor. And definitely the answer for every problem that they look at is according to them communism. So in this communism, the difference where they differ from pluralistic school when they say that there will be conflict is, whereas in the pluralistic school they say government or state will solve the problem, they say this people who are rich, they will try to manipulate the system, therefore we cannot even trust the government. So it is actually the workers who should come forward and create a society where there is egalitarianism or equality. That is just a wish list, it has failed in almost all the countries, and Russia is a prime example, the downfall of USSR is a prime example. So this state where there is no government or no state is called anarchy. So in UPSC prelims last year, there was a question with respect to the common aspects of Gandhi's anarchy and Marxist anarchy in one of the optional papers, and also in UPSC prelims. So the answer is whereas a communist thinks that anarchy will solve the problem and it is a very negative outlook towards those who are rich. The Gandhian principle says that we should adopt Sarvodaya. Sarvodaya means this is something that is close to the unitary approach where the employer takes care of the rest of the workers as uh, a parent or a father like figure, and this is because of the trusteeship model involved in Sarvodaya. What is this trusteeship model? This is a moral philosophy where the employer feels obligated towards workers. So this is a sort of a positive feeling rather than a negative feeling proposed by Marxists. So in that way, both Gandhi and Marxist says that we don't want government to intervene with us, but the connotation in which Marxist says is different, because he says that government is bad because it colludes with the rich, whereas Gandhi says that we should not feel the necessity for a government and trust the good instincts of people. So this is the Marxist approach. And the final one is systems approach. And this approach was given by a scientist, social scientist called Dunlop. So he says that management, worker, and government, each one of them will work in their own self-interest, and they work together by understanding and realizing that these self-interest will actually give better results. But each of the decisions taken by one of the stakeholders, like management or workers or government, it will depend a lot on external factors. So if all these external factors are taken into consideration, together the output will be very beneficial for all the stakeholders. This is what systems thinking proposed by Dunlop says. Now, what is this systems thinking? To simplify it further, there are a lot of outside factors or environmental factors which are responsible for acting on stakeholders, and because of these actions, the output will be changing from time to time. So, what are these factors? One, it can be market. Say, for example, today we have Ola and Uber. Tomorrow, if drones are delivering them, or drones are delivering our food packets, there will be no need for employing people. So that will also be one aspect which will impact the decisions of stakeholders. Second one, money. If there is not enough money in a business, obviously there will be downsizing of the workforce. Similarly, if there is a lot of money, that sector will see lot of hiring. So that will also impact the workers. Third one is technology. This is self-explanatory. If a lot of automation is coming in, then what happens is there will be job loss. Similarly, if a skilled workforce is increasing in an economy, then GDP of that country increases significantly because of their skill. So technology influences economy. And the last important point from the aspect of political power as well as uh, social influence, it is power distribution. How power is distributed across different social classes and different political arenas will actually impact all the stakeholders. Who are these stakeholders? We have already discussed them, like workers, trade unions, employees, government, etc. You can refer them in slide 2. So what is the ultimate output? It will decide the rules of the workplace. So for example, after the pandemic came into the picture, isn't it because of this external factors or external environment that a lot of companies which resisted work from home, which despised work from home, mandated it? Now we are in a scenario where a significant chunk of the software industry is slowly transitioning towards a remote work or permanent work from home. Now, isn't this a good example of external factors impacting the rules of the workplace? Yes, it is. So this is exactly what systems thinking is trying to say. And we come to the last approach of industrial relations, that is the human resource management. This is the one that is prevalent right now from 1970s, and it puts human beings at the center. It focuses on human relations. So there are 3 points that you have to understand here. So this approach says that if you take care of the social needs, the psychological needs, and the economic needs of the people that you are working with, their productivity will increase and they will also grow personally. When they grow personally, you will also see that your company is growing well. So these 3 points should be implemented in small teams. So if you're someone working in the corporate world or a software company, you know the concept of teams and team lead. The reason why this approach is so successful is because it understood the very essence of human relations. In order to succeed and retain a workforce, you have to give them a sense of belonging, and that is possible through small teams. And these teams, headed by a team leader, will be actually managing the social needs, that is, say, for example, work life balance, or psychological needs, rewards and appreciation for work, and then economic needs, that is hikes and appreciation. So this is the structure that you can relate to in the present world. So this is HRM approach. So this concludes the first aspect of different approaches towards industrial relations. If you like the content and if you want the PDF of this video, you can find them on the Telegram channel called UPSC highlights. UPSC highlights, and the address for this is Hindu highlights without a gap. And if you like the work on this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.